Hello and welcome to the Colts Cover-2 Podcast. This is the Thanksgiving edition. We are taping it on Wednesday. We are hoping to get it to you so that some of you, if you are driving on Thursday or Friday and your family falls asleep in the car, so I'm sure they don't all want to listen to us, you have something to listen to. The Colts are playing the Patriots today. Normally, we try to kind of use the opponent as a way to look at Colts issues. I have bad news. I don't have many Patriots thoughts. My entire Patriots thought process is that offensive line is terrible, and that's probably good for the Colts. Oh, and rookie quarterbacks are fun. That's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, I mean, it is the opposite of last week when we talked for like the whole podcast about how good the Lions are and all the ways that they would kind of test or challenge or in some ways expose the Colts and trying to use them as a model for like how you can build certain parts of your team. There just aren't very many ways to go like that with the Patriots. I mean, we could break down, the matchup, but to me, a lot of this is like when we get into some Colts issues here in a different way this week, I think that'll be more of your game previews. Like this game's going to really be about, did the Colts find workable solutions to problems they have and were their strengths enough to overcome some of the weaknesses that just aren't going to get fixed right now until they at least have a bye week here in a week. So yeah, I mean, the Patriots, they have an exciting young quarterback in Drake May behind an offensive line that is going to get him hit 1,000 times. I mean, you would have his sack percentage is at 8.5. Jacoby Brissett before that was at 10.2. Those are brutal. So that could kind of tell you how the Colts can go about winning that game. And then they give up a lot of big plays on defense. It's not translated from Bill Belichick to Gerard Mayo as smoothly as they hoped. So that's going to be more about, can the Colts find any solutions to an offense that's really going through it with health and youth and a lot of issues right now. So I think we can just kind of roll into some mailbag questions. How about that?
Yeah, Nate's got mailbag questions. It's always a weird thing trying to do content and stories this week, just because most of y'all aren't on the internet. Just being honest. And so Nate, yeah. I mean, we get it. It's Thanksgiving. Yeah. You got food to prepare and all kinds of stuff. Here, we'll start with that. Then we'll start with this question. It was asked to Shane Steichen today what he liked most about Thanksgiving dinner. He said stovetop stuffing. I have thoughts about that. And honey baked ham. What's your answer in that particular? Our colleague Greg Doyle asked Shane if he was just going to microwave all that up. I don't know if Greg knows this. You cannot microwave a honey baked ham. I mean, I guess you could, but like, please don't.
It also would take away the stovetop part of the stuff.
Yeah, I'm not real sure you can microwave the stuffing.
I don't think so. I'm not a stuffing guy, to be honest with you. Not a big stuffing guy. I can have some of it, so that would not be my choice. I mean, the first thing I'm always going for is generic. It's the turkey, and I go for the dark meat and douse it in gravy. But as far as like the dish that sort of feels like, I don't know, more of a holiday tradition, to me, the way I grew up is my grandma had this like raspberry strawberry kind of jello mix that she would make. That's just, it's good, man.
That's so Midwestern.
I know, but it's good.
Does she put stuff in it?
What do you mean by stuff? It's got
like fruit. Is there fruit in it?
Yeah, strawberries and raspberries in it. It's like a jello. So it's.
I know, but is it like actual? Is it actual chunks of fruit in the jello?
Yeah.
Actual chunks of fruits. Nope. I say that not to say that Nate is wrong, because this is the Midwest. We grew up with many. My grandma Erickson used to make a pink jello. That was a lot like that. I am just kind of skeezed out by jello and really skeezed out by fruit in jello.
Oh, okay.
So this is a me thing. This is a me thing, not a Nate thing. This is a Midwest thing.
There's some deep, dark memories of Joel with a pink Jello that we're going to try to stay here. Because I have much warmer memories about eating Jello at holiday time. It was not a scarring thing.
The funniest thing about the pink Jello is that at some point, basically everybody on that side of the family was fighting over who was going to make the pink Jello for one of the holidays. And eventually somebody said, "Does anybody actually like this?" And the answer was no. the pink Jello ceased to exist at that point.
Something about that pink Jello didn't hit, because it's the opposite. My family, this is the most popular thing. So it's hard for me to describe until you get to have it. But because I don't know exactly what's in it, sort of like an old family recipe. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, I mean, the pies. It's like one of the only times I'll have pie, but I have lots of pie and like all of it. I like pumpkin, apple, pecan, peach.
In our house, I make the stuffing. My brother and I always do it together. I make the stuffing. It's cornbread stuffing. The cornbread is made from scratch. It's a recipe I've gotten pretty good at over the last 5 or 6 years. My wife is from Alabama. For some of you, just where she grew up. For some of you, those of you who don't know, she makes a sweet potato casserole and bacon wrapped green beans that are basically like, I said bacon wrapped green beans, but I basically mean bacon candy. I don't know how to describe it any other way. And then we'll tell this story, and then we'll move into the questions. But she's gonna make a pecan pie this year, and it's got bourbon in the recipe. And she asked me if she could have some of my bourbon, and I said yes, you can have the cheap stuff. And she said she wanted the good stuff, and I said if you cannot touch the E.H. Taylor under any circumstances.
Think about how good the pie would be.
No. The bourbon taste does not change as much in cooking as it does going down neat. So,
that is definitely true. It is not the most efficient way to use bourbon. That's fair. But I have a
bottle of bourbon. I have a bottle of bourbon that is for mixing and cooking. It is not for anything other than like gargling to get rid of a sore throat. In terms of taking it neat. So anyway, that's our Thanksgiving. Nate, you are kind of driving this one. You've got the questions.
Sure.
You put out the call. I'll let you pick which one goes first.
Okay. Let me see what's the best place to start with. We'll go out with one that's sort of one of the kind of more interesting big swing type questions. So I put this out on X and Blue Sky. So they're going to come from both. But from Blue Sky, Chuck DeBlue says, if both players had been on the board with the Colts' first-round pick, would you guys have taken Brock Bowers or Laiatu Latu? And who do you think Chris Ballard would have taken if both were available? So it's interesting because of Latu's having a pretty good rookie season, but we talk a lot about that other position group and what they don't have at tight end. So I know where I'm going on this, but what are you feeling?
Ballard would have taken Latu. I think that my understanding is that the guy they were trying to trade up for was a wide receiver, but I think, oh gosh, 74 catches. Bowers is making this hard on me.
Yeah.
I'm still going to go Latu. Okay. I'm going to zag here. I know how bad the tight ends are, but the defense is essentially all pass rush all the time, or only pass rush all the time, and I think they needed that guy off the edge. I'm going to stick with it and say they should have added a different tight end somewhere else. I think that's a very unpopular opinion. I'm very curious to see what you have to say.
Yeah, I'm going to go the other direction. I would have taken Brock Bowers. Part of it is I was really big on Brock Bowers heading into that draft. I'll admit I did not know as much about Laiatu Latu at the time. He was kind of lower on some boards because of that concern over the neck issue that so far has not been an issue. So some of it is preconceived notions, but it's also I just see the tight end position is it's very hard to fill in the draft. There's not often guys who come into the draft that look like, hey, this guy can step in and really be good from day one. And then Kyle Pitts was mostly that, and then he got hurt with the Falcons, so it didn't carry over. But he had a pretty nice rookie year. But Brock Bowers is probably having an even better year. Like you mentioned, he's 74 catches, 744 yards, and 3 touchdowns in 11 games so far. And that's with the Raiders. That's with them trying out a new quarterback pretty much every game. I just envision him in this offense with, you've got that attention on Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs gaining some out of the slot, Alec Pierce, teams are playing 2 deep safeties to try and take away that deep ball. That middle of the field, that kind of intermediate range is very open. And part of it's Anthony Richardson's, growing accuracy trying to hit there, but they don't have any tight ends to throw to. I mean, we saw it on Sunday when they are getting chances right now, they're not cashing in. 0 yards on Sunday. They had, 26 catches for the season. Again, Brock Bowers alone has 74. And I just think of the way that Shane Steichen could scheme that guy open if he had that kind of reliable number one option, where right now they're mixing and matching at tight end because they don't really have anything that they feel reliable. With Bowers, he would just be kind of your plug and play. He could be a guy on tight end screens, a guy off play at some of these RPO concepts where they're currently they're forcing the Colts to throw on the RPO concepts because, that's not the strength of the Colts. But if you have Brock Bowers on the receiving end of it, I think it's different. As far as what Chris Ballard would do, I'm less sure on that. I think it's very close because I do agree that when he was trying to trade up with the Giants, I think that was for a wide receiver. But as far as if they were both there at 15, I think it would have been very, very close. I think his inclination, he's all about the trenches, would be there. I do know Shane Steichen heading into that draft was very big on we need a number 4 option in the passing game. Again, they saw that as wide receiver early. They later fell back with A.D. Mitchell. Maybe they play that the same way, but I think they would have been very tempted by Brock Bowers given that they did still have concerns about Jelani Woods' health. They knew the guys behind him were not going to be any singular guy to kind of stand out. They were going to kind of mix and match, and I think they would have been tempted by it. So you can kind of go either way. They thought they believed they were getting the best pass rusher in the draft. So I could see them sticking with Latu, but I could also see them going with Bowers. If I have to pick one, though, I'm going to say they'd be tempted by Bowers. I'm just going to be different.
Can I put a caveat on mine?
Sure.
Can I take Bowers and Jonah Ellis instead of A.D. Mitchell?
Yeah, I mean that's how these things go. Is it would have affected the second round pick? So
Jonah Ellis went with pick number 76 in the 3rd round. 6'2", 248 pounds. I'm gonna look up his RAS and see if he had any chance of getting drafted by the Colts or not. 8.59. Okay. And he does have 4 sacks as a rookie. So let's put it that way. If it's not just Latu versus Bowers, I'll take Bowers, but then I also get Jonah Ellis to play the role Latu's playing.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. The part that's tough is we know how much Chris Ballard wanted that next level edge rusher. He tried for Danielle Hunter in free agency, then drafted Latu. So clearly that was something they were after. They felt like they wanted more juice there. At the same time, it's easy to forget about this. They did have Samson Ebukam at the time with Kwity Paye, Dio Dangbo, Tyquan Lewis. I personally think, you do want a real difference maker there, but I don't know. I just would have been curious to see how much they would have been okay with that group versus Brock Bowers. It's a good question, though, where it's one of those sort of you can kind of go either way on it. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, this is also from Blue Sky. Chris, sorry if I mispronounced this, Romanu asks, do you think A.D. Mitchell will slide into the slot to keep Michael Pittman at Z and Alec Pierce at X? And how do you feel A.D. Mitchell has progressed or not progressed from back when he was in the slot in week 1 and week 2? We'll start off on this. It does sound like it's going to be a long shot for Josh Downs to play this week with his shoulder issue. I am not going to totally rule that guy out because I've seen him do crazy things before where he didn't practice for a full week in Germany last year, played only third downs because they had a bye week coming up and somehow made that work. And I do think they're dire in the slot right now because A.D. Mitchell, I don't know, is the best fit for that specific role at this moment in his very young career. They did put him in there, when they had to, and they knew Josh was out for, 4 to 6 weeks at the time. It ended up being 2 games. And it didn't click quite the same way. Like AD's still very talented. He has some moments, where he clearly gets open very, very well. Great measurables. I think there's a lot to look at for the long term, but the slot route is just very, very detail oriented. Route running, chemistry with the quarterback, be in the right spots, a lot of option routes. They'll scale it back if they need to go with him, but it's really big on spatial awareness, and I just think the difference between how Josh Downs has handled spatial awareness to A.D. Mitchell is big enough to where I don't know exactly what they'll do. I have a feeling it's more likely we see kind of different personnel formations to make up for that, whether it's 12 personnel, Michael Pittman in the slot, maybe a little bit of A.D. Mitchell in the slot. But I personally don't think they'll just sub A.D. Mitchell into the Josh Downs role at this point.
Yeah, I think it changes the offense. We were talking about this earlier, and I just think that maybe you can't run like those option routes like you were talking about. That Mitchell has progressed, I think, and he does well when he knows exactly where he's going, but we still see miscommunications. Reggie Wayne was not happy with Mitchell after that one play where he ran a short in, and it looked like Richardson was expecting a slant. Reggie Wayne was not happy, which is usually a decent indicator if the position coach is upset, whether or not somebody did the right thing. I just don't know about that. It makes it probably a little bit more of a down the field intermediate passing game. I don't think that's necessarily a terrible thing because Anthony Richardson is kind of wired that way anyway. But yeah, you'd still obviously rather have Josh Downs. I just think it's a little bit different. I wonder if you maybe try to do a little bit more of piecing it together where a couple different guys do things. Mm-hmm. Pittman in the slot, maybe. Do we see the return of Anthony? I guess we kind of have to see the return of Anthony Gould, don't we?
Yeah.
Just for punt returns.
Yeah, a return guy too. So that's kind of what I think will happen is because Anthony Gould should be active, I imagine there's going to be – I think they'll work a few plays in for him that work out of the slot. I think it's going to be cobbled together because if they move Michael Pittman there for the majority of the game, I think you pointed this out earlier, it's like messing with 3 different receiver positions now in an offense that doesn't have a lot of chemistry. I don't imagine that's exactly what they want to do for like an entire game. It does underscore how kind of valuable Josh has been to this. I mean, you look at how off kilter their offense was in week 2 when they went to Green Bay and they didn't have him in the slot. Josh has been pretty important, and I think that's been some of the dilemma they've been in recently, where they're trying to play 2 tight ends to help out Matt Gonzalez. Is it means taking Josh off the field, and that's the other tricky part too. If they live in 12 personnel, that's putting out 2 members of your worst position group, and I don't know. It shows you how difficult this week is from a personnel challenge. We haven't even gotten to the offensive line part of that. But again, the good part of it though is it's not like you have to outscore the Lions offense here. And in fact, I don't even think you're going up against the Lions defense here. Lions defense, by the way, fun fact, they just went with this Colts game. They just went the second straight game not allowing a touchdown. First time they've done that in 25 years. Just give you a taste of how different the Lions have been. So that was a different challenge last week than they're going to get this week.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that last year they had all slot receivers and no backups on the outside, and this year they have all outside receivers and no backups in the slot. They also don't have Ashton Dulin.
Yeah.
So they don't have Ashton Dulin, so they're replacing 2 wide receiver spots. They're basically replacing a full game's worth of snaps because pretty much Doolin is averaging 10 to 15-ish, and then Downs is running, in the 75-ish percent range. Yeah, that's the other piece of this is that they kind of have to replace a whole wide receiver in two different spots.
Yeah, big time challenge here. So as we'll kind of stay along that theme here as we get through these questions. This one's going to come from X, staying in the passing game side of this. This is from Karthik on X, who asks, multiple players have mentioned using the shorter passing game to help get Anthony Richardson into a rhythm, especially when teams are playing a lot of too high shells. Why hasn't the coaching staff leaned into that, and are players dissatisfied with the play calling? I'll start on this one just because I think this reader's accurately, or I should say, paying attention to how we're, some of the stories we've written in interviewing some of these receivers. And Alec Pierce is one who said this recently on Sunday, talking about how they could run shorter depth of target routes for Anthony Richardson and for the offensive line to limit kind of how far they have to drop back, how many times, like just how much of a load is on that offensive line to play backward in the drop back game, and on Anthony Richardson to, the downfield passes are just going to be lower percentage and harder to pull off, and more that can go wrong, like penalties, than some of this quick game stuff. And he was following the theme that Michael Pittman Jr. has talked about, running more base plays instead of shot plays. Josh Downs has mentioned that some of these deeper routes, when a team blitzes, it's a little hard to know what to do. So they're all kind of hinting, and it all comes from a positive place from them, I think, where I wouldn't call it like dissatisfied so much as, they're dissatisfied with the results. The offense has been bad for a while. It's scored over 20 points one time in 7 weeks. And so they're looking for what kind of ways can we help this kid out? They're trying to take a little off Anthony Richardson's plate and say, how can we all as an offense, as a receiver group, step up and help him out? And just some of the ideas they have are, the primary reads on some of these passing plays, making them a little shorter. And I think it's valid. Some of it's a personnel issue right now where, as an example, just to get to the offensive line side of this a little bit, when Joe Flacco was in Cleveland, he played behind 3 backup offensive linemen, but the Browns relied on a Pro Bowl tight end in David Njoku and a pass-catching running back in Jerome Ford as like the quick game outlets. They don't have those at tight end and running back, so that's why the wide receivers are trying to say, hey, maybe we can use us as a little bit more of that quick game. And I think they have a point to it. It's not as simple when you're limited to using just those perimeter type options in a slot option to do this. But I do think they have a good point. And as far as why maybe the coaching staff hasn't leaned into it, again, part of that is personnel issue, tight end and running back. But also, I do think sometimes especially when like the Colts face a double-digit deficit, I think that's when Shane Steichen gets a little bit antsy and tries to kind of dial into the explosive bag a little quickly when teams happen to be playing that too high shell where like they haven't set up that opportunity yet for the explosive. So I do think that's a point that they can make to help this out, is just some shorter depth of target plays until you get the occasional safety to step up and help defend that, and then maybe go for the deep shots after that.
I agree with all that. I think there's also a part of it that's Richardson centric. Just the fact that he's young and he's not as like what. So we were having a conversation about quarterbacks using the backs a while back, the Steichen brought up, like a lot of the guys who are really good at using running backs and stuff like that are like Phillip Rivers, Drew Brees. He was just throwing out like several veteran guys. Tom Brady's another one. I think I've brought this up in the podcast before, but like when Adrian Peterson was in New Orleans, he said he never really played with a quarterback who was good at finding the running back until Brett Favre. which seems crazy, like just based on the way most people remember, including me, remember Brett Favre playing. But if you go back and look at those Packers teams, the running backs caught a ton of passes in the West Coast offense. The fullbacks caught a ton of passes in those offenses. And I think there's a part of it where, like, I think the way most people think of checkdowns to the running back is the quarterback drops back, looks for everything, and then if he doesn't have anything else, he just dumps it off. I would say, from having covered Rivers, but especially from having covered Breeze, the thing that sets those guys apart, the ones that he was mentioning, is that when they came up to the line of scrimmage, they're so good at reading the coverage and knowing the play that the ball is going to the running back immediately rather than waiting for the dump off. I think you probably could have seen it. It was easiest to see this in the Saints offense, kind of in the Colts offense a little bit when they went from Rivers to Wentz. So I think for Colts fans, that'd be the easiest one. But in the Saints offense, when they went from Breeze to like Taysom Hill or Teddy Bridgewater or anybody else, all of a sudden this long history of running back catches that they had went down. Richardson might get there. Anthony Richardson might get there, but I still feel like there's probably some of it is maybe an older quarterback. Maybe an older quarterback comes to the line and realizes, right off the bat, like this has to be checked down. Whereas maybe Richardson is still waiting to see if it's going to come open, even if he reads the coverage. I just think it's like a minor thing with him, but there's probably some of it that has to do with the quarterback. Now, maybe the coaching staff can help him more with that. And they probably can, but I do also think there's a piece of it that has to do with Richardson's youth and him learning the game.
Yeah, that's a good point about the veterans. I remember Matthew Stafford would just eat with Theo Riddick when I was in Detroit, and it was the same deal. It was quick decisions to get it to Theo Riddick based on a mismatch that he could see once you read its, you read its man coverage, he's on an angle route against a linebacker, or it's a certain zone coverage that's going to leave the flats open, and that's kind of where a guy can catch it on the run. And also you need the guys who can do that. A lot of the guys we've mentioned here, Theo Riddick, Naheem Hines, these guys catch passes. They're good pass-catching running backs. That is not what the Colts currently have. So that's part of it too. But I do think there's got to be, when you don't have that at running back, there should be some kind of a little bit of adjustment to that at the wide receiver level. Especially I thought, Josh Downs and Michael Pittman could do a little bit more of that, but Downs is out this week. So we will see how they adjust on that. But I do especially think it's going to help the offensive line. Dalton Tucker, Matt Gonzalez, we'll see who all's out there. If maybe they start Mark Lewinsky this week instead. Maybe it's Danny Pinter instead of Tanner Bortolini. But it's going to help them not to drop back deep so often. Quick game is really a big help for the offensive line if you can pull it off with your quarterback and your play calling and all of that. Next question here comes from Gavin Martin, who asks, what is more surprising to you? Is it the development of Womack and Jones at outside cornerback, or is it the step back that the linebackers have taken? So EJ Speed, Zaire Franklin, who's kind of maybe missed or exceeded expectations greater than the other between those? So I'll let you go.
What's more surprising to me is that Samuel Womack can play a fairly passable NFL cornerback, to maybe better than that. It's kind of crazy to think about where they'd be if they didn't have him. He only had like 200 snaps or something like that in the NFL before this. I don't know that he's been great. It felt like the Lions targeted him a little bit with Amon-Ra St. Brown on those in-breakers the other day. It's hard to know with the coverage, but it felt like they targeted him a little bit. I don't know that he's been like a huge difference maker, but he's definitely been like a starting caliber corner. I definitely didn't see that. I think we all kind of thought of him as like insurance for Kenny Moore when they first got him. So from a surprise point, and this will get to my second point real quick, from a surprise point, definitely Womack and Jones too, because I think Jones is kind of having, there's been some ups and downs, but you'd expect that from a second-year corner. The thing you and I kind of keep telling each other is like, it'd be great if he was doing this as a number 2 outside corner with like a really, really good number 1 on the other side. The linebackers, maybe we didn't talk about this enough, but you could not that you can necessarily see it coming, but there have been elements of this going back to Zaire Franklin's knee injury last year. He was not great in the second half of last season. EJ Speed has always had some impulsive tendencies. I think maybe we didn't talk about it enough, but I think that you could maybe see this coming if you were paying attention down the stretch last year.
Yeah, to answer the question, to actually get to, not give a cop-out answer, I am going to say I agree with you. I think Samuel Womack, that side of it specifically is surprising because a big reason why I sounded alarm on the cornerback group at the start of the season was I thought they only had like 3 outside corners on the roster because I just didn't know that was in Samuel Womack's bag. It's not the size profile they use there. I know he had played some, but it was like you mentioned, it was fewer snaps in the NFL at corner than Juju Brents had just playing half of his rookie year. So it was like a very small little group of a sample to base on that this player who does not have the length of a normal Gus Bradley corner was going to use. And yet, I felt confident though that we would end up seeing him because Juju Brents had that injury history, and Dallas Flowers was coming off the Achilles tear and really looked in the preseason like that was not going to really be an option. So I figured we'd see him, and then who knows how it was going to go. But I didn't expect it to be as competent as it has been. And so a lot of big shout out to Samuel Womack, who, like you said, I wouldn't say he's like been amazing, but he has certainly been better and more capable than I would have guessed. So that part of it, and credit to Jalen Jones too, has been late last season, then early this season, looked like a player who was panicking at times, who was getting picked on, and usually at cornerback, when you see that slip of confidence, which I did feel from him early in the year, that is hard to rein back in when those guys are like in the fire. So much credit to him and to Kenny Moore and the coaches for working through that and getting him to a place where I think he's perfectly fine. It should be a number 2 corner who's currently playing at number 1. But the most surprising thing to me about the defense is the fact that the linebackers are the weak unit. So that kind of combines both of those things, the overachieving element of the corners and then the step that these linebackers have taken backward. Like you said, some of it we could see that the struggles in coverage for Zaire Franklin, I don't think is a big surprise just based on his skill set and late last season. But I would say the consistency of that group and the tackling specifically has surprised me that it's fallen to where it is. Just as an example here, EJ Speed is 4th in the league in broken and missed tackle percentage.
Yeah.
He's number 1 in the league in broken and missed tackles. So that shows you, he is on the field a lot right now, but 27 broken and missed tackles. I didn't see that coming the same way. Or, Zaire Franklin has 16 broken or missed tackles. That's somewhere like that's the top 15 in the league as well. I just thought that in that specific part of the game, those guys would be more sure. I thought it was a good fit for them behind when they brought in Raekwon Davis. They re-signed Grover Stewart. Unfortunately, DeForest Buckner did finally miss games, but it was a problem really those first 2 weeks with Buckner and kind of a little bit since he's come back that, I could see where coverage would be an issue for those guys. I just thought the run defense, and I also thought that they would make more impact plays in the run game. The tackles for loss, I'd have to look it up here real quick here, but for both of them has fallen off from what we've seen them at their peak. So 2 years ago, maybe you're right, this was the start of it last year, but 2 years ago for Zaire Franklin, his big breakout year in 2022, he had 12 tackles for loss. This year he has 3 tackles for loss, but he had 3 last year. So maybe that was a trend we could have seen a little earlier. Last year was I'll admit, a harder read for me on the run defense as a whole because it really felt like 2 seasons between when Grover Stewart was out there to when he wasn't. This year with Grover Stewart out there all the time, I think it's brought a little bit more to light. It's fallen to these linebackers, and sometimes they make it. Sometimes they've had great moments. A couple of games they've won at home against the Dolphins and the Bears. Those guys have stepped up. Vikings game, I thought they were very good in run defense. But when they've slipped, they've slipped a lot, and I think it's by far the most inconsistent unit of the defense. So
yeah, it's even weirder to think about what happens if one of them gets hurt.
Yeah, very true.
Maybe you get Jalen Carlisle back soon, although we don't know. I haven't seen him out there, but yeah, maybe, but yeah, as much as I like Grant Stewart, I don't know if I want him playing full on 75 snaps a game.
Yeah, Grant Stewart, the game he had to step in and start when EJ Speed missed, he did have that 18 tackle effort, which was awesome. But it is, as we're seeing a lot of these positions, backups playing over and over again, eventually they start to get targeted. They become part of the game plan. We haven't seen him in coverage the same way. So, it's that linebacker group as a whole has been, maybe it's because it's had such a high bar in the past is why it's factoring into it, no doubt. But it's definitely fallen off expectations some. This one's probably not a lot of discussion on, but I'll just get to it as we're rolling through these from D. Renard for show off X asks, has there been any talk about when or if Juju Brents makes it back this season? The sense I've gotten on Juju Brents is that they were always going to kind of get through the bye week and see. And the hope, though, was that if they have a shot at the playoffs, they thought that this could be something he could come back from and hoped he could come back from. I know he's been rehabbing hard for a while there. He was on crutches. He couldn't drive. He was really immobilized at the start of it. But that's progressed pretty well. You see him in the locker room now. I've seen him in the weight room. He's working to try to get back, but there hasn't been. They have to open his 21-day practice window first. It seems like they're just going to wait through the bye, so it makes it's one small way that this game on Sunday against the Patriots is important, is that they need to keep the math in a certain way if they want Juju Brents to come back and be part of that playoff push. Whereas if they feel like they're not in it the same way, if they lose 2 straight here, and that's when they're looking to bring him back potentially, with a guy with his injury history, they may ask him to just sort of to get ready for next year. I don't know. Do you have a feel on that?
Mid-December was what I was told. Mid-December was what I was told for Juju Brents. So that fits with your timeline after the bye week.
Yep. Get through the bye week and kind of see where they're at. So it sounds like, that's why probably the next 2 games are pretty critical to keeping in contention for that. I think we should be down to just kind of one last year. I guess there's a couple more here. Rick off Blue Sky asked, why have the Colts been so bad in the middle of games? It consistently feels like they aren't able to counter when teams adjust. I'd have to look more into that. I don't know that. I do understand, they've had a couple moments when they've roared back in the fourth, Jaguars and Jets. They've had some good game scripts too, where they score early. This past Sunday was a good example where they scored their first couple drives. The middle game is specifically, I think part of it is that they've been better on their script than the rest of the game, because I do think they game planned pretty well. They put together some good offensive minds between Shane Steichen and Jim Bob Cooter in practice, and they built out a pretty good rhythm that sticks to base plays, sticks to the run. The past couple of weeks in particular, they have stuck to that run. They've used more quarterback run lately, early in games. I think when they've had to use it in close games late, they've used that quarterback run. You saw that against the Jets. So I do think sometimes in the middle of the game, when the script runs out and something goes haywire, either offensively or they're down by a good amount, I do think there's a little bit of panic that sets in. Some of that's play calling. Some of it's like last week. That's when the penalties kicked in, and all of a sudden you're in 1st and 20, and it's sort of like, things are just off kilter, and you're not able to run like the plays that are fit to your strength. But I think the main thing is it goes back to like this team doesn't, because of the quarterback changes, because of having a young quarterback, because of maybe the injury concerns Anthony Richardson, maybe because of losing Jonathan Taylor for a couple games, they haven't really built out an offensive identity that has built a track record that lets them just lean into that when things are a bit of a slog in the middle of games. So I do think sometimes it's like a little bit of mixing and matching of what they're trying to be in that middle portion of the game, when also that's a portion that maybe falls a little bit more on some of those roster points, tight end, running back, right now offensive line. Those, like, it falls a little bit more on the players and less on the game script, and maybe that's why it feels that way.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a tough one because, you know, if you talk to anybody in the NFL, they say adjustments happen basically every drive, every play, every piece of information that they're getting as they find out what the other team's game plan is. Part of it, I think, is Anthony Richardson tends to play better in the fourth quarter, generally. Why that is, I don't know. I don't know if it gets simpler for him when it's crunch time or whatever, but it's kind of I know that's been a part of the thing with him going forward. I think one of the other things with the fourth quarter, like that Jaguars game, is they're just trying to protect their lead. They're not trying to – now, how you let Alec Pierce run by himself down the field when you're trying to protect your lead, that's a question only the Jaguars can answer. But their defensive numbers suggest they've had that question. They've screwed that up several times this season. So it's a good question. It's an interesting question. I think if we asked it, I don't know that we'd get a good answer. I would guess it'd be something like, yeah, we're looking at that. Try and take everything into account. We wouldn't get a real answer. But it is interesting because they all talk about, and most NFL coaches talk about, like, you have to make adjustments as it goes.
Yeah. I like that because I hadn't thought enough through that part of it, but I do think there's truth to it where Anthony Richardson seems to hit something in the fourth. They have good game script to start, and there's sort of that middle slog where you're sort of like, it has felt like there have been games where they were going to get blown out and then they pull back into it. Texans week 1 kind of had that feel to it. It started out well and middle was weird. So that is kind of how this team has been a good amount. I think we just down to one last question from this group to get to. Well, we'll start with it. We'll throw a fun one in here for fun. Brad Lenzer from X asks, What's your favorite underrated place to eat in Indianapolis or surrounding counties? So is there a place that jumps out to you that you like to go to that maybe people, that isn't on everyone's radar?
Underrated. Oh, this is underrated. The Alley's Ale House at Pinheads and Fishers is really good. It's really good food. It's like really legit. The I think they're called Chubbs now. I hate that name. I think they changed the name of them to Chubbs, but it's pepperoni rolls. The pepperoni rolls are fantastic, and they've got some really good slider stuff. Yeah, it's a post softball stop for me during the summer. Alley's Ale House at Pinheads is really good. It's really, really good food, and you're like, it's a bowling alley, whatever. No. There's a bar on the side, and there's a bar that's part of it, and the food is exquisite.
Yeah, I have not been there. I've been to the other. That's different than the. Yeah, there's another place that's similar to that ale house that I've been to. I'll have to try that one out though. That does sound pretty good. For me, one place that I really enjoy. It depends on where you're from as far as, is this on your radar? Is it not? I live by Fountain Square, so Kuma's Corner is a burger spot that's pretty popular over in Fountain Square. But if you're from the suburbs, maybe you haven't gotten over there as much. It's just like they've got every type of burger combination, anything you could want to get on it, like whether you want super spicy burger, some kind of, Mexican style burger, breakfast burger. They've got all kinds of very creative place and sort of like a haunted kind of feel to the place. So it's just a very different spot to roll up to. So I'd recommend that if you're in Fountain Square. Fountain Square in general has, I think, some underrated food places, and that one jumps out to me. Okay, back to the Colts questions. Last one here for this group from Ed Holinsky on X, who always sends in some very good questions I usually use for the mailbag. But Ed asks, will the Colts stay course and let Anthony Richardson develop into an NFL quarterback, or will the team get impatient? I feel like
time frame. What's the time frame? What are we talking time frame here? This season, going into next season?
I think it's about this season.
Okay.
Will they stay course this season? I will let you start because I don't fully know. I only say that because when we did our one to go on or one to throw away, I think I combined them both. But I just said sort of the promises are not the thing to follow here. It's sort of TBD. The current promise for them is to play him, but that's the hope. Do you think they will stick to the course though?
Yeah, they definitely have gone back on what they've said before. Sometimes in a matter of days. Messaging, public messaging, maybe not Shane's like a strong suit. I think they stick with him for the rest of this season. I think mostly because you can't really make the case anymore that Joe Flacco gives you a better chance to win. Also, I think that outside of an injury, by the time you got to that point, you'd be out of the playoff race already, and there's just absolutely you'd be out of the playoff race. Like if he's awful the next two games against and then they blow it against the Patriots, and then they lose their chance to get back in against the Broncos. Then they're 5-9. Like any thought of the playoffs isn't really there. So I think they stick with him this year, just from that. And then I do think that if you played really bad down the stretch, that maybe they won't stay the course the way maybe some people would like them to in the offseason. Just kind of guessing based on the way the NFL kind of works sometimes. I don't know if that's the right idea. He'd have to play really, really, really bad. But I think that maybe there's a chance they could get antsy. Although I will say this, the off-season quarterback availabilities suggest that maybe that even if that happens, maybe they'll stick with him just because what next?
Yeah. No, I think ultimately predicting it, I think they will stick with him for all the reasons you laid out. It's one of those where, like, I guess the only scenario where maybe I could see them considering something else is say a scenario where like they beat the Patriots, get blown out by the Broncos, win that next game. I even forget the order of that, but they win a couple games here, but they're overcoming Anthony Richardson, and they feel like they're in the range of the playoffs, and they get back on this idea of like we got to make the playoffs, but they feel like Anthony's holding them back. That'd be the closest to me, but even then, the difference between this and the last time they decided to do it was they've seen Joe Flacco out there for long enough to feel like it's not a boost to the offense. I think back when they subbed him in for the Vikings game, I think they were very much thinking about how he played against the Steelers and the Jaguars, and going back to last season's run with the Browns, and the idea that like I think they really thought it would work pretty well, and then they saw that it didn't. And so I don't know that they'll get in a spot where they think like, hey, that's going to be the thing that really puts us over the top. Can't say for sure because they have gone back on some of it before, but I do mostly think that like they're in this mode with Anthony. He's either going to lead them to the playoffs and play really well, or maybe it won't. Maybe if we see what happened on Sunday will happen again, where they're not as it's less about how he plays and it's some of the issues around him that keep him back. Kind of either scenario, or if he's not good and they fall out of it, it's still evaluation and reps and all of that. I still think mostly they're back on this train and they're going to see how it goes. And yeah, it should lead into next season being, let's see really where this thing ends up. Let's use another offseason where that's not about rehab. That's about, refining some technique when he gets with all these different, quarterback gurus and stuff like that. But that's what I think. That's what I believe the plan is right now. And I think they'll stick to it, but I just throw out there that you never quite know. So just be prepared for curveball can come at any time with this franchise with quarterback. So that's all the
preferably not tomorrow.
What's that?
Preferably not tomorrow. Preferably not on Thanksgiving. No curveballs on Thanksgiving.
No, please not. I'll be out at the facility. I do not want to cover a big news story because I'm trying to get to Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow night. So that'd be good. And we don't want anything to ruin the Thanksgiving of the fans here. I think the reaction was pretty strong the last time that they made a quarterback decision like that. So let's just get through the holiday and let's see what New England brings. How about that?
Yep. If you've had your Thanksgiving, if you're about to have your Thanksgiving, we hope it's going to be or will be a good one. For the Colts Cover-2 Podcast, I'm Joel A. Erickson. This is Nate Atkins. We'll be back from Boston after things either go the way we think they're going to go and the defensive line eats Drake May for lunch, or they don't go that way and things are scary and dark. But for now, turkey, stuffing, pie.
And not pink Jell-O.